This video is going to show you what complex numbers are and how and why we use them. We're also going to talk about their standard form and also a little bit of how we find complex numbers when we're trying to plot them on a coordinate plane. So let's start by taking a look at this expression. What's wrong with this expression? I see a normal 2 plus a square root and then a negative 1. Hopefully you notice that square root negative 1 is impossible. It's not going to ever come out real. Usually what we'd want to see is we'd want to see square root 1, and that would equal 1. But this isn't what we see. We see a negative. The problem with this is that we don't have a way of really dealing with it. So really, this is what is wrong. So, what do we do about things when we see negative signs underneath square roots? Well, imaginary numbers. Again, if it's not real, like real numbers, 1, 2, 6, 1/2, it must be imaginary. So, I is the imaginary number. And it's going to be equal to the square root of negative 1. So whenever I see a square root negative 1 in any problem from now on, I'm going to replace it with an I. So what is a complex number? A complex number would be a combination of real numbers added or subtracted to imaginary numbers, like I. Now we have a standard way of writing these. We always write the real part first. So A will be the real number part, and B with the I will be the imaginary part. So let's take a look at a couple of these examples. Are the following numbers in standard form? I see in the first problem that 3 is real, it comes first, followed by a negative 4i that comes second. So the answer to this one is yes. In the second one, I see the imaginary come first, but the real second. So this one is no. It is not in standard form. What it should say is 2 plus 2i. Is the next one in standard form? I see the 3 comes before the 4i, but I have a 2 out there in front. So again, the answer here is no. If it was in standard form, I would go ahead and distribute the 2 to both terms on inside the parentheses. So I should have written 6 plus 8i. So how do you use the whole imaginary and I thing when trying to write things with i's? So let's break down the negative 4. We can't square root negative 4 normally. We could square root a positive 4, but not negative. So inside negative 4 is a negative 1 times a 4. So the square root the 4, I get 2, and so that's going to give me 2. And the negative 1 is what's going to give me the I. So the answer is 2I. Let's take a look at the 8. The 8 is not a perfect square, but hidden inside him is. So what are all the pieces that make up our negative 8? Well, there's 4 and 2. And for the negative, a negative 1. So square root the 4 and you get a 2. The negative 1 is turned into an I, and the square root 2 stays inside. Take a look at the last one. So let's see. Inside the 28 is a 4 and a 7 and also a negative 1. And I end up with square root 4 is 2, so now I have 3 times 2. Square root negative 1 will give me the I, and square root 7 stays inside. We simplify the outside into just a 6 I square root 7. A good thing to notice right now is this. When I say the negative 1 turns into I, it's not that negative 1 equals I. That's not true. Negative 1 is just negative 1 normal. It's when it's inside a square root sign that it turns into the I. So remember that. It's I is not equal to negative 1. Okay? Remember this. That is not true. This one right here, this is the true statement. The square root of negative 1 is I. So some of these things are already in standard form. So in order to get them completed with their i's, break down what's in the square root sign. So again, negative 8 comes from a 4 and a 2 and times a negative 1. So square root 4, I get 2. Square root negative 1, I have I, and the square root 2 stays there. I still have the minus 8 in front. And that's it. That is completely simplified. It doesn't get any simpler than that. Take a look at the next one. The next one, the 5, is supposed to come first. So first off, let's move them out in front. Next, let's know that there's a negative on the 2, so we're definitely going to pop out an I. And the square root 2 is going to stay inside. What goes between them? Well, notice that there is no minus sign in front of the square root, so this is automatically a positive square root. So I would put plus here. The next one, square root 50 plus square root negative 50. Well, first off, let's think about what 50 is made up of. You can get 50 from 25 times 2. Now, for the 50, that's easy. Square root 25 is 5, and square root 2 stays inside. Plus, next we have the negative 1. So basically, it's the same thing as this, but instead, there's a negative. So the 5 is going to come out, I for the negative, and square root 2 here. So this is your final answer. What you need to make sure you don't do is do not add the square root 2 and the square root 2 and to make the 5 plus 5 a 10. This 5 is normal, the other 5 has an I, so they are not like terms, okay? Not like terms, okay? So do not add. You're done there. So there are a couple of things you need to know. When we just have an I with a number, we call it pure imaginary, like 4i. When we have a number plus or minus a number next to I, then we just call it imaginary, like 2 minus 3i. And when it's just like a normal number, like 6, that's what we call real. And you guys are most familiar with those numbers. Pure imaginary, imaginary, and real.